She raised her glass and cleared her throat like she was about to give a toast. "Everyone," Eleanor said, standing just a little too proudly at the head of the dining room table. "I think it's time we shared some very exciting news." I froze, the stem of my water glass pressed against my lips. James looked over at me with a confused half-smile, waiting to see if I knew what was going on. I didn't. Then she said it. "Natalie's pregnant." It wasn't a question. It wasn't a joke. It was a declaration, delivered with the kind of triumphant tone usually reserved for lottery wins or surprise engagements. I blinked, breath caught in my throat. "She passed on the wine, didn't she?" Eleanor continued, laughing lightly. "I just knew it. A mother knows these things. And really, I've always said all that infertility business was overblown. Drama mostly. Stress-related, surely." Silence fell across the table like a dropped plate. My fork clinked gently against my plate as I set it down. My hands were trembling, but not from surprise. From the weight of what she had just stolen from me. I opened my mouth, but no sound came. And Eleanor, God help her, kept going. I told James months ago, didn't I? I said she'd get over the nonsense eventually. Women are built for this. It just takes the right mindset, the right prayers. And look, here we are. I wasn't pregnant. But that morning, James and I had gotten the call. The one we'd been praying for, crying for, silently hoping for, through 5 years of heartbreak. We had been approved. Next week, we were going to meet our daughter for the very first time. We'd decided to wait until this dinner to tell James's family. When the time felt right, we had planned to say it together, on our terms. But now I was sitting in the wreckage of that moment, watching my husband's face contort from confusion to realization, then to something I'd never seen in him before. Rage. Cold, precise, and devastatingly quiet. And suddenly, I knew. Eleanor wasn't the only one about to make an announcement. James stood up, not fast, not with a dramatic flourish, just quietly, like someone who had made a decision and was no longer willing to unmake it. "Mom," he said, his voice low but steady. "Sit down." Eleanor blinked, startled. "James? What? Sit down." He didn't raise his voice, but the room tilted around those 2 words. The chatter from the younger cousins died immediately. Forks hovered mid-air. David, James's father, shifted uncomfortably in his chair but said nothing. My heart pounded in my chest, but I didn't dare move. I just stared at the white linen napkin in my lap, willing myself not to cry. James looked around the room, then back at me. I met his eyes. He nodded once, then turned to face his family. "She's not pregnant," he said flatly. "Not biologically. And after what we've been through, I can't believe you'd throw something like that around as if it were gossip. James..." Eleanor started, but he cut her off with a glance so sharp she actually recoiled. "For 5 years," he continued, "we've fought harder than anyone should ever have to start a family. We've done every test, every round. We've heard the word incompatible from more doctors than I care to count. Natalie's gone through procedures that left her in pain for weeks. We've lost pregnancies we never got to tell anyone about. And while we were grieving, you were asking why she hadn't tried harder." His voice cracked. Not with weakness, but with truth. "Today," he said, placing a hand gently on my shoulder. "We got a call. After interviews, background checks, financial audits, and more paperwork than you'd believe. We've been approved. We're adopting. And next week, we get to meet our daughter." Gore! Gasps. Actual, audible gasps. Eleanor looked like she'd been slapped. Her mouth opened and closed once, then again. Adoption. James nodded. Yes, and if you'd waited even one more hour, we would have told you. The right way. The respectful way. Eleanor's face twisted. But that's not the same. No, James said calmly. It's not. It's better. Because we chose her. And we earned this. Every part of it. He took a breath, then said the thing that gutted the room. If you can't respect that, you don't belong in her life. Silence. Nobody moved. Then James pulled out my chair, offered his hand and said, "Let's go, Nat." I stood, legs shaking but spine straight, and followed him out of the dining room, past the stunned faces, past the untouched dinner, and past a mother-in-law who had no idea how far she'd just pushed her son away. And as we walked out into the cool autumn night, I realized something. That wasn't the moment we lost our family. It was the moment we finally built one. Together. We didn't speak for the first 10 minutes of the drive home. James kept one hand on the wheel and the other on mine, gripping it like a lifeline. His knuckles were white. Mine weren't much better. I stared out the passenger window, watching familiar suburban streets blur past as my heart tried to settle. "I'm sorry," he said finally. I turned to him. "What?" I should have stopped her sooner. I saw it coming. The moment she opened her mouth, I knew, and I froze. "You didn't freeze," I whispered. "You protected us. You gave our daughter the welcome she deserved." He didn't reply, but I saw the way his jaw relaxed, just a little. Back home, I kicked off my shoes and collapsed onto the couch. The lights were still low from the morning. I'd lit a candle before we left, vanilla and clove, and the scent still lingered, comforting in a way I didn't expect. James walked into the kitchen and poured 2 glasses of water. When he came back, I was scrolling through the photos we'd received from the agency. 5 pictures of a little girl in a yellow dress, her hair in 2 puffs, her smile wide and fearless. Maya. "She has your smile," James said, sitting beside me. "No, she doesn't," I said, voice catching. "She has her smile, and it's perfect." He kissed the side of my head and pulled me close. "Do you think the others will understand?" Shotted slowly. "They already do. Did you see David's face? The way he looked at Eleanor? He knew." James sighed. "He called her out once, back when I told her we were starting IVF. She told me I was wasting money on a woman who doesn't want kids. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to hurt you." The weight of that hit me in the chest. "I'm glad you didn't," I said. "I don't think I could have carried that on top of everything else." We sat in silence, letting years of buried grief settle into the space between us. But this time, it didn't feel like something heavy pulling us down. It felt like something finished. That night, as I crawled into bed, I opened a blank page in my journal. At the top, I wrote, "To our daughter, who came to us not through blood, but through choice." Then I began writing the first letter I'd ever write to Maya, the first of many. In it, I didn't mention Eleanor. I didn't talk about the dinner or the years of judgment or the moment my heart sank in front of a table full of people. I wrote about the joy in James's eyes when we got the call, the way I ran barefoot across the kitchen to hug him, the sound I made when I saw Maya's picture for the first time, and the way it felt to know, deep in my bones, that I was a mother. Because that night may have ended in silence at the dinner table, but here, in this house, it ended with a promise. You are already loved more than some people get in a lifetime, and I will spend mine making sure you never doubt it. The next morning there was a voicemail from Eleanor, Her voice was sharp, clipped, and tight with restrained anger. "James, I think it's clear that last night got out of hand. But this entire adoption idea, it's rash. It's not too late to reconsider. You're being emotional. And Natalie, well, I always knew she had a tendency toward dramatics. I played it once, standing in the kitchen with my coffee growing cold in my hands. Then I deleted it. James never heard it. That was the first time. I consciously chose silence over confrontation. Not because I was afraid, but because she didn't get to take up space in our lives anymore. Not without respect. We told David, James's father, about the message. He came over that evening with a toolbox in one hand and a pack of baby blue wall decals in the other. "I was hoping I'd get to help with the nursery," he said gently. "I didn't know if you'd want me here." I reached out, hugged him tight. "We want you here." We spent that weekend painting the small room across the hall a soft gray-green. James built the crib while David installed shelving. I sorted tiny onesies by size and color, folded and refolded them like they were fragile glass. And every time, I caught myself smiling. I stopped, surprised. The grief hadn't vanished. The pain of what we went through wasn't erased. But something had shifted. This time, we weren't preparing for something uncertain. This time, there was a name, a face, a timeline. Maya. She was real and she was coming home. When the agency confirmed our meeting date, I couldn't sit still. I baked an entire tray of lemon muffins I didn't even eat. I rearranged the diaper station 4 times. James finally took my hand and said, "Babe, she's going to love you. You don't have to earn it. You already have." I started crying in the middle of the hallway, and he just held me until I remembered how to breathe again. The meeting was set for a Tuesday morning. We drove to the agency in a daze, half nervous, half radiant, both dressed like we were going to church. They led us to a playroom with cheerful murals and plush animals lining the shelves. And then she came in, tiny, bright-eyed and curious. Her hands clutched a stuffed lion. Her gaze met mine with cautious interest. She didn't cry. She didn't run. She walked straight up to me, tugged the hem of my sweater, and asked, "Are you the one with the giraffe?" I nodded, holding out the small plush giraffe I'd brought, my fingers shaking. "This one?" She nodded, took it, then looked up and said, "Okay." And just like that, I was a mother. She sat in James's lap 5 minutes later, giggling as he made silly noises. He had tears in his eyes. I did too. So did the social worker, though she tried to hide it behind her clipboard. Later that night, back at home, we told our 2 closest friends. They brought pizza, balloons, and a book titled "Families Are Made in All Kinds of Ways." We cried. We laughed. We stayed up too late just sitting in the nursery, already referring to it as her room. 2 days later, Eleanor sent a single text. "You're making a mistake. She'll never be your real daughter." I stared at the message for a full minute, then passed the phone to James. He read it once, locked the screen, and replied with just 3 words. "Don't contact us." It was the cleanest goodbye we'd ever given her. No guilt, no second chances. Just a door finally shut. Because in 2 days, our daughter would walk through a new one. And when she did, we weren't going to let anyone follow us in unless they came with love. The morning Maya came home was quiet, almost reverent. No photographers, no loud relatives, no spectacle. Just us. James, me, and a car seat carefully strapped in the back, with a tiny girl holding a giraffe and kicking her legs in rhythm to the hum of the road. We'd packed her favorite snacks, a playlist of lullabies, and more wipes than any reasonable person should need for a 30-minute drive. I must have checked the straps on the car seat 6 times. James didn't tease me once. He just smiled and said, "She's safe. She's home." We pulled into our driveway just after 9 a.m. A soft breeze rustled the maple leaves above us. Sunlight dappling the sidewalk. David was already there, waiting on the porch, holding a balloon that read, "Welcome Home, Maya," in pink and gold. Behind him, I could see a banner strung across our living room window. "Family begins here." James got out first, opened Maya's door, and unbuckled her carefully. She reached for him without hesitation. When he lifted her into his arms, she tucked her head into his shoulder like she'd been there her whole life. I stepped out and joined them. David took one look at her, and tears welled in his eyes. He didn't reach for her. He just nodded and said, "Hi, sweetheart. I'm your Grandpa David." Maya looked at him, then at us, then gave him a solemn nod. "You have a balloon," she said. "I do." He chuckled. "It's yours." She took it without a word and held it like treasure. Inside the house, we had juice boxes and muffins. Nothing fancy. Just a few close friends, James's sister Ellie, and her 2 kids who'd drawn a picture for Maya that said, "Welcome, cousin," in crayon. Maya pointed to the drawing and asked, "That me?" "That's you," I said. She didn't say anything after that, just carried it around the rest of the day like it was sacred. We didn't talk about Eleanor. No one asked where she was. No one brought her up. Her absence hung in the air, yes, but not as a shadow. More like a space we'd chosen not to fill. At one point, Ellie came over with a plate of muffins and sat beside me. She leaned in quietly and said, "I know my mom messed this up. Badly. I just want you to know. We see you. We love you. And Maya is ours. All of ours." I squeezed her hand, too choked up to speak. That night, when the last guest had left and Maya was finally asleep, curled in a cloud of fleece and stuffed animals, we sat on the floor outside her room. Just the 2 of us. James leaned his head against the wall. "You know what the craziest part is?" "What?" "She already fits. Like the hole we've had for so long. She just stepped into it." I nodded. "That's because it wasn't just a hole. It was a space waiting to be claimed. And she had. Not by accident. Not by biology. By love. By decision. By something deeper than blood." We stayed like that for a while, just listening to the soft rhythm of her breath through the baby monitor. For the first time in years, we didn't feel like something was missing. We felt full, whole, complete. A week after Maya came home, we had a new routine. It wasn't perfect. Mornings were a tangle of cereal spills, missing shoes, and songs about brushing teeth. But every moment felt like it belonged to a life we had been building brick by invisible brick for years. James would make silly pancake shapes, while Maya danced to the sound of the blender. I packed her tiny lunches with fruit she never ate, but insisted I include. And every evening, without fail, we sat together on the living room floor, reading The Very Hungry Caterpillar for the 12th time, because she liked the page with the pickle. The house felt different, not just louder, but warmer. Every corner glowed with purpose, her drawings on the fridge, her stuffed animals in the laundry basket, her shoes by the door next to ours. She had woven herself into our lives with a grace that made it feel like she'd always been there. And then one morning, a small white envelope arrived in our mailbox. No return address, just our names, James and Natalie Parker, typed neatly on the front. Inside was a folded card with gold trim and 5 handwritten words. "You chose wrong. I won't watch." No signature. But we didn't need one. James read it, then tossed it in the trash without a word. I didn't ask. I didn't need to. What we had wasn't something that required validation anymore. It didn't live or die by who approved or who showed up. It lived in the fact that when Maya fell and scraped her knee, she ran to me. That when James tucked her in, she whispered, "Love you, Daddy," before she closed her eyes. That was real. That was ours. Later that night, James's father came by with a rocking chair he'd refinished from the attic. It was dark walnut, a little creaky, with cushions Eleanor had sewn decades ago. He looked unsure, like he wasn't sure if he was bringing a gift or a ghost. "I wasn't sure if this would be okay," he said, "but it belonged to her mother. I thought maybe—" Maya ran up and touched the armrest. "Can I sit?" I nodded. She climbed in, tucked her giraffe into the crook of the cushion, and began rocking slowly. "I like this chair," she declared. "It squeaks when I move." David smiled, eyes glassy. "That's exactly how it's supposed to sound." After she went to bed, I asked him quietly, "Do you think she'll ever come around?" He sighed. "My wife. She believes that love is blood. That family is something earned through tradition. But you and I know better." "She's missing everything," I said. "I know." He looked down at the rug, then back up at me. "And I'm sorry. I wish she could see what I see." I reached for his hand. "We see it. That's enough." And it was, because sometimes family isn't who claps the loudest when the child arrives. It's who stays when the crying starts, who comes back with a rocking chair, even when they're carrying someone else's silence, who chooses to love louder than someone else's refusal. And in this house, love was loud enough for all of us. 1 month after Maya came home, I stood in her room while she napped, sunlight spilling softly through the curtains, casting gentle gold onto the walls we had painted with such care. The air was still except for the soft rhythm of her breath through the baby monitor. I looked around the room, the bookshelf filled with picture books, the name Maya hand-lettered above her crib, the stuffed giraffe now fraying slightly at the ear from too many hugs, and I realized this was the room I used to picture during our hardest nights, when I cried quietly into the pillow after another failed round, when James sat beside me, holding my hand in silence, because words couldn't reach the depth of what we'd lost, when we clung to the idea of parenthood like it was a fragile balloon we were terrified to let go of. Now it was real. Now she was here. And not once. Not in the long hours of paperwork. Not during our first meeting. Not during the awkward diaper, changes, or bedtime meltdowns. Did it ever feel like she wasn't ours? That evening, after Maya had gone to bed and the house had gone still, I sat at my desk and pulled out a fresh page of my journal, the one I'd started the day we were approved for adoption. This time I didn't write for me. I wrote for her. "My sweet Maya, I used to believe I needed to carry you inside me to be your mother. But now I know. I carried you in 1,000 other ways. In every whispered prayer. In every silent cry. In every ounce of hope I dared to hold when everything else told me to let go. You didn't grow beneath my heart, but you grew inside it. And when the world tried to tell us that love had limits, you proved it didn't. You made us parents not by biology, but by belonging. You were chosen, Maya, not randomly, not by accident, but deliberately, fiercely, completely, and we will spend the rest of our lives proving to you that you were always meant to be ours." I signed it, closed the notebook, and set it in the drawer with the adoption paperwork and the first photo I ever saw of her. As I turned off the lights and headed for bed, I passed Eleanor's unopened envelope on the hallway table, the last note she ever sent. We hadn't heard from her since. And honestly, I was okay with that, because motherhood, it turns out, isn't about proving anything to anyone. It's about showing up. It's about choosing someone over and over, even when it's hard. It's about holding your child in the dark and promising them that no matter who walks away, you never will. And that night, as I slipped beneath the blankets and felt James curl in beside me, I understood something I'd been chasing for years. This was the life I was always meant to have. Not the one I pictured, but the one I built, with open arms, a quiet heart, and a love that refused to ask for permission. And that's how I learned that motherhood isn't about pleasing people or being validated by tradition. It's about showing up. When it's hard, loving without condition, and choosing the child who chose you back, with her little arms and her whole heart. What would you have done if someone tried to steal that moment from you? Let me know in the comments. And if this story spoke to something deep inside you, like it, share it. Stay for more true stories about quiet strength and louder love.